On September 15th, 2015, the world was introduced to a lovely little indie game called Undertale. For many of us, this was the first project we experienced from now internet icon Toby Fox, developer, writer, and composer of the game. It was almost unbelievable the level of detail and care that went into Undertale's development, leading to a product that many consider to be their favorite indie game of all time. However, while I do love Undertale, maybe not as much as other people, I wouldn't call it my favorite indie game of all time. No. That would go to Toby Fox's second project following Undertale. A little installment that quickly became one of my favorite things ever. Enter a cold October night, or hot if you live in California like me, where Toby Fox was tweeting some really vague stuff. I personally just jotted it down as Toby being Toby, but then Toby pulled at Toby by releasing the apparent sequel to Undertale, Deltarune. And for free, no less. Toby Fox proving it's not just about releasing games, it's about presentation! Cut to many people not being able to even open the software due to their virus protection picking it up as a threat, which prompted Toby Fox to tweet about how to run it. When people finally, and quite literally, fell into the new world of Deltarune, we were greeted with an Undertale AU. Looks like the fans aren't the only ones making these anymore. Now it's actually canon. But Deltarune wasn't really even utilizing the beloved characters that put Undertale on the map. Undyne? She's some cop. Alphys? Your brain-dead teacher. Sans? On his way to Super Smash Bros. Instead, you were playing as a new character named Chris, being tormented by resident mean girl Susie, and complimented by resident fluffy boy Rouse. It was strange to say the least, and everyone was scrambling at their chance to figure out what the heck was going on and how it was linked to Undertale. But the only scrambling being done were to the letters that spelt out Undertale. Get it? Deltarune? Undertale? You scramble them, and just like how the letters were mixed up, the world of Deltarune was practically the same as Undertale's, just with an entirely different context and themes. Quickly though, people stopped with their theories, mostly, and just enjoyed the ride without having to link it to Undertale. A short ride, but a great ride nonetheless. The plot of Deltarune involves you playing as a person named Chris, spoilers by the way. Spoilers for chapters 1 and 2. And as Chris, you are very neutral to everything, so be as chaotic as you want. Eat that moss. Put on those jail shackles. At least until you are shown to possibly have psychopathic tendencies. After being introduced to the chalk-eating Susie the dinosaur, you are forced to go with her to the closet. Except this closet propels you into a dream world? Is it real? Is it not? No one knows, but the story and emotions you feel from here on are entirely non-fiction. Susie is very adamant on not participating in this fantasy world, very clearly ignoring the whole prophecy thing that Rouse speaks about. Oh, by the way, that's Rouse. You're going to be enamored with him for the next few hours, to the point where you can't bully him even if done ironically. You toss the manual hard. Its pages scatter in the wind. That's okay, Chris. I'll just make a better one next time. And that's essentially the premise. I won't do a play-by-play on the plot because there's just way too much to cover, and I'm hesitant to make this video one of those short retrospectives you see other more qualified video essay writers making. The gist is that you team up with Susie and Rouse, meet some colorful characters, like really colorful, learn what makes these kids tick, and ultimately save the worlds you are propelled into. At the time of writing this, there are only 2 chapters out for Deltarune, with a 3-year gap in between, so who knows what the final product will look like. But just from an educated guess, it's pretty apparent that the other 5 chapters will feature the same storytelling structure. Also, dang, Toby, 7 chapters? I'm a patient boy, but it's going to be interesting finally completing this game in 2036. With my kids. My plushie kids. So that appears to be the formula so far. Enter the world, get your character development, leave the world, brutally rip out your heart leading you to commit violent acts and attempt to emotionally lash out against the world for taking your brother Azrael away from you, and watch those snazzy credits. Funny enough, it reminds me of another game that has the same sort of narrative structure and chapter style. You never see it coming. Yeah, Persona 5. I played it after experiencing the original Deltarune Chapter 1, but before Chapter 2. And I gotta say, very kindred. You take control of a misunderstood lad that must dungeon crawl with their classmates by going to another world, whilst learning about said classmates in those same worlds. Of course, the context is completely different, but they're relatively the same. Though I really don't want to learn that Alphys is secretly abusing the students behind Toriel's back. It's a good formula, though it is funny because in Persona 5, your world is relatively normal, since it's based on our own, town? In Deltarune, your world is arguably as strange as the ones you jump into, because everyone is a monster hybrid thing except for you. Do you feel special yet? Speaking of the monsters, let's talk about those crazy peeps. But I'll bullet point this section since every character feels just so unique, and they're the reason I fell in love with this game. With L'Oreal hair that just don't lie and sharp teeth to keep it that way, we have Susie, a bully who is convinced everyone hates her but does nothing to rectify that through her attitude. Despite the fact that she eats chalk, Susie likes to think of herself as a cool cat, disrupting everything and essentially being the hardest to get along with. Throughout Chapter 1, Susie is like an undercover antagonist. She actively makes progressing harder for both you and Rouse, going so far as to force a gameplay dynamic where you have to tell your enemies that our friend Susie is crazy, just so she doesn't kill them. The thing with Susie is she is just not into doing any of this when you first enter the Dark World. Prophecy? Screw it. I'ma go team up with the bad guy. What I like most about Susie is just how much she shakes up the plot. She's extreme to the core and very difficult to predict. Will she be good? Who knows? Will she eat Lancer's face? Probably. Does she and Lancer spend time creating a weapon from your schematics only to blow it up for laughs? Yep, that's Susie, a character who, at the end of the day, just needs a friend to teach her it's alright to care because they care about her. Enter Lancer, who I have just mentioned. Lancer is the definition of a chaotic mad lad, perfect for Susie. He is not capable of being the villain, so Susie has to step in and help him be the villain at multiple points, much to the dismay of Rouse. The arc of Susie humbling herself to be his teacher and friend leads her to eventually deciding to play the game with Rouse and Chris. Susie progresses from antagonist to protagonist pretty seamlessly, and when she joins the party for real, man, it just feels so worth it. In Chapter 2, Susie has pretty much been domesticated. She comes with a number of funny sprites now, and it's obvious from the get-go just how invested in the dark world she is. She's in it for the long haul, and there's no one better to count on, unless you have to solve puzzles, or if she's hungry. Or if she's sleepy. Do you smell that? It smells like a cinnamon roll. Oh no, that's just Rouse, the lonely little prince with no subjects and a lot of heart. Of the three protagonists, Rouse is the only one that originates from the Dark World. A darkener, if you will. But unlike other darkeners, he can seamlessly transition to other dark worlds without turning to stone. And even more interestingly, he knows pretty much everything about how the dark worlds work. Possibly even more so than other darkeners, which is proven multiple times in the story. He's essentially the lore master of the game. And even though I just said there's no one better to count on than Susie, I'm going back on that immediately. You can count on Rouse to be your friend, moral support, huggin' buddy, white mage, butler, huggin' buddy, and tutorial expert. Rouse is a jack of all trades in a world filled with playing cards. The character is created to be the most likable presence in the game, and the most buyable plush outside the game. It's almost like this was on purpose. Like he represents someone else. Someone like Chris's brother, perhaps? Someone like Asriel, perhaps? Okay, it's fairly obvious since the letters in his name are scrambled that he is supposed to represent Asriel in some way. And even though we don't see what Asriel looks like in Deltarune, we do have his Undertale appearance to reference. Pretty darn similar, I'd say. It is rather bold to have this be such an obvious ploy that he is supposed to be Asriel in some way. But neither Chapter 1 or 2 confirm anything about what Rouse even is, let alone being Asriel. I would bring up my theories on how Rouse is slowly going to become evil and corrupted as the chapters go on, but that's probably going to end up being Chris. Funny enough, the boring, neutral-looking protagonist is possibly the most perplexing character in the entire story. Throughout the adventure, you can see them do the wackiest things with absolutely no expression. An experience that never gets old, let me tell you. There's not a lot to say about Chris when they're in the Dark World. They're a capable leader, nothing much else really though. However, in the real world, that's where the quality of his character becomes apparent quick. Most people that know Chris think of him as a mischievous little guy, but these monsters also see very clearly that they wear a much different aura than they did when Asriel was around. The most apparent example being how they are able to play the piano, but when doing so in the hospital, front desk comments on how they usually play better than that, possibly because they miss Asriel. His silence can be endearing as it is creepy, to both us and the NPCs in the game. But the real crux to his character is that, despite the fact that Chris has good days, they will rip out their soul, throw it away for the time being, and commit acts ranging from eating all the pie slices to slashing your car's tires. I mean, not your car, Toriel's the breadwinner here. But the most incriminating thing they do has to be when they purposefully unleash a new dark fountain onto the world. You know, that thing Rousey said not to do? Chris is possibly making the entirety of Deltarune happen as it goes. They don't care about the misery of it, they want their adventure. But I'm reaching theory levels again. And not just a theory, a game theory! A game theory that hasn't been confirmed. We're only 2 chapters in, and Chris always leaves us confused. Are they bad? I don't think so. If anything, I think Chris will turn out to be misunderstood. The theme encroached onto our minds in Chapter 1 is that no one can decide who they want to be in this world. Does that mean we'll have to do a genocide run? Does that mean our pacifist runs are ultimately pointless? Until we know the answer, we'll enjoy Chris in all their creepy, endearing glory. Oh hey, it's me again, coming from the future. I just want to let you know that I actually wrote this before it was discovered that Deltarune Chapter 2 does include a genocide route, and it can dramatically affect Chris's character, but I'll talk about it a little further on. So until then, just enjoy these wholesome characters. Before we get depressing. Oh my god, I love Noelle. I had my theories that she was going to be inserted into the plot as a teammate, and Chapter 2 confirmed it. She arguably has my favorite part in Chapter 2. You get ditched, a little randomly, by Rousey and Susie, and taking their place is Noelle, who is hiding from her apparent teammates, Queen and Berdley, by wearing a cardboard box on her head. Just like the holiday she represents, Noelle is sweet and kind. However, she is immensely shy and non-confrontational. Also, she's clumsy. There's a lot she needs to work out with herself. She crushes hard on Susie, and most of her character development is her trying to be brave enough to speak up about it. And since Susie is Susie, it's like trying to watch a butter knife cut through a piece of steak. One of those things either need to be sharper or less dense. She's a very impressionable girl that needs a responsible figure in her life to teach her about what's important to fight for. Her mother sounds like she's not really that close to her, and her dad is hospitalized, so who knows where that is even gonna go. On top of all this, it sounds like she has/had a sister named Des, but she's obviously not in the picture anymore. Girl needs some love, and luckily for her, she is very lovable. Or maybe unlucky for her, which leads me to... I also had my theories that he was going to be inserted into the plot as a teammate. I just was hoping it wouldn't come true. And to be fair, he doesn't, but he does go to the Dark World. When he gets there, he meets up with the main antagonist of the chapter, and it becomes apparent that he is so irritating that not even she tolerates him. For context, the main antagonist is a literal dictator that kidnaps people. This confirms that Berdley is pretty much handcrafted by Toby Fox to be the most unlikable character in the game. And I know it's not the same for everyone, but he kinda is so unlikable that he loops around to becoming ironically likable. Seriously, he's a freaking alpha male gamer of all things, and he wants his gamer girl trophy. He's kind of a monster, but thankfully he does mellow out and actually takes the loss in learning he's not being a good person. See, the whole thing with him is he's essentially that one kid from Polar Express.
Do you know what kind of train this is? Do you know what kind of train this is? Well, do ya?
Berdley is very full of himself, and his demeanor screams out that he is a genius among morons. Which, he's not wrong about the moron part, but he is wrong about the genius part. The whole power trip was caused by an incident involving the school spelling bee. When Noelle flubbed it and couldn't spell December, Berdley could, and won that contest. Before this, no one even thought about Berdley. From then on, he continued to get good grades because he strong-armed Noelle into helping him with his schoolwork. See? A monster! Don't you just want to do something bad to him? Well, hold off on that idea. We'll get to that. Lancer is funny, and not to call a spade, but he's a spade. He's delightfully insane, and most of Chapter 1's clever jokes involve him. For example, he isn't old enough to ride a motorcycle, so he just sets his bike on fire. Genius! Lancer is a simple little guy. You can essentially know exactly the core of who he is within the first 10 seconds of talking to him. In the spirit of Deltarune's bad guys, he's not so much a bad guy, just a chaotic force for the heroes to deal with. Except for the king, I guess, but I'm not gonna mention him because he's pretty boring, admittedly. But then then Susie joins Lancer and the chaos becomes too much to handle. So crazy, so quirky, Lord have mercy. Honestly, not too much to say about Lancer. Like I stated, he remains relatively the same throughout both chapters. Just a nice little dude who really doesn't want you to kill his dad. Relatable! He will help you come up with team names, laugh like a baby Santa Claus, and break down Susie's emotional defenses. I would say he's the funniest of the blue people bad guys, but instead that honor belongs to... Oh man, Queen, your back must hurt from carrying Chapter 2 so hard. One of my main criticisms with King is that, despite some possible retconning in Chapter 2, he has no redeeming qualities. He isn't funny, his design is meh, his boss fight is meh. The only thing that isn't meh about him is his boss theme, because by God, it actually slaps. So when Queen hit the scene in Chapter 2, she was already an improvement over King in practically every single way. My favorite thing about her is she seeks complete and utter domination over her world in the most nonchalant way imaginable. She actively makes truces with her enemies, plays games with them, forgets to bring more cages to capture them. Though to be fair, a lot of scenes with her involve an explosion gif, so I guess that's not as nonchalant. Her goal for almost the entirety of Chapter 2 is just to coax Noelle to her side, so she can make her open a dark fountain. The coaxing here involves kidnapping her and locking her in a tower, which will clearly make them friends. It's about as insane as it sounds. And contrary to popular internet memes, she has much more to say than just,
Chris, get the banana!
My personal favorite being...
You get me, Chris. You do not do crazy things like have opinions, or scream when I capture you, or tell me horrible plans for Smart Boy theme park.
Though don't get it twisted, Queen is as deadly as the battery acid wine she drinks, especially when she gets into her giant robot. Okay, so real talk, I was already 100% in and was completely satisfied with the final boss already, but then she got into the giant robot. So you have to fight her by essentially playing Punch-Out. And fun fact, Punch-Out is one of my favorite games.
It's like, I was made for this.
Queen is amazing. She set the bar so high for Deltarune villains that it'll be hard to surpass her. Until then, enjoy the memes. Chris. Crisscross applesauce. Both Undertale and Deltarune use a turn-based combat system that employs a bullet hell style of attacks that one must move the heart to avoid. The attacks can range from ooh to ooh. Both games also have a system either involving attacking or acting. Attacking is simple. Time your strike to kill your enemies. Acting is a little bit more complex. Essentially, every enemy becomes a puzzle to solve. Once you solve their puzzle, you then have to use a turn sparing them. Sparing them grants you no XP, but it does give you money. Toby Fox created a unique battle system in Undertale, and the differences that happen to the plot between attacking and acting are incredibly well known, even if you've never played Undertale or Deltarune, so I won't waste my time explaining it in detail. I will just say that he did a lot of major tweaking in Deltarune that made engaging enemies a joy. The biggest difference here being the use of a three-man team. You can spend a turn defending, which raises your defense and your TP, which are essentially magic points for abilities that can be used. Extra TP left over after a fight will convert into dark dollars, so raise your TP whenever you can. There's also an added dimension to accumulating TP that involves getting closer to the bullets instead of dodging them outright. So if you think you have the skills, approach them. He dares you. You can spend a turn attacking or acting, but then tell your teammates to do something else, such as use an item to heal you. Or maybe you can pair up with a teammate to one-shot an enemy by acting, and then tell the last teammate to spare them, getting them off the battlefield immediately. There is also a type of status that makes the enemies tired. This doesn't make them spareable, technically, but when that happens, you can utilize Rouse and some TP to spare the enemies early without finishing their puzzle. There's just a lot of little things that make Deltarune's combat way more deep and satisfying than Undertale's, because as much as I love Undertale, the combat felt more like it was an excuse to have a game, which was a further excuse to have a plot. Deltarune feels more like an actual game where you can legitimately have fun making builds and fighting challenging bosses with your teammates. And yeah, there are legitimate builds to both attacking and acting, which is very appreciated. It feels like an RPG adventure with your buddies now, albeit wacky and you don't have to kill anything. Well, at least I don't. I won't kill shame you if you do, though. Okay, maybe just a little. Alright, we're here. So, what could be said about not only Deltarune's music, but Toby Fox's music in general? It's masterful. He's a brilliant composer, and it is very easy to hear why. Music is important to me, and I am quite the connoisseur of video game soundtracks. So it's of no surprise that I connected so hard with both Undertale and Deltarune just from the music by itself. But I feel like I'm no longer alone in this. There are a lot of people I know that ignore video game soundtracks outright, but they will gladly put on Toby Fox's music when I pass them the aux. It's special, and I'm pretty sure I don't have to tell you that either. You've probably heard his work once or twice when watching other YouTube videos, or by watching wrestling promotions. No, seriously, one of my favorite wrestlers, Kenny Omega, legit came out to Megalovania once, and it felt like a fever dream. Speaking of Megalovania, it's easily his most popular song from Undertale. It might be a stretch, but I legitimately believe that this song single-handedly carried Sans the Skeleton from indie game character to popular internet meme to Super Smash Bros. Fighter.
But he's just a Mii fighter, it's not literally Sans.
Oh, Cacnea, I didn't think you were in this video.
Oh, I'm always around to play devil's advocate.
But we're not talking about Undertale here, or Sans. We are talking about Deltarune. Just look at the title of the video down there. Unless YouTube updates the website and puts it on the side or something. To the surprise of no one, Deltarune also has a great soundtrack filled with many bops. Allow me for just a moment to list off a few myself. Just the ones I listen to at least once a week. Another Hymn, Susie, The Door, The Legend, Lancer, Rudebuster, Empty Town, Field of Hopes and Dreams, Fanfare, Lantern, I'm Very Bad, Checker Dance, Quiet Autumn, Rules Card, Hip Shop, Gallery, Chaos King, The World Revolving, Friendship, The Holy, Your Power, You Can Always Come Home, Don't Forget, Faint Glow, My Castle Town, Queen, A Cyber's World, Cool Beat, Cyber Battle, Smart Race, Hey Every, Now's Your Chance to Be a, Pandora Palace, It's Pronounced Rules, Lost Girl, Powers Combined, Knock You Down, Big Shot, Until Next Time, and Before the Story.
Treecko, that's way too many.
Alright then, top 3. Rudebuster, Field of Hopes and Dreams, and A Cyber's World. I really like this soundtrack, okay? The best thing about the score is probably the level of charisma it carries with it. It's surprising just how much these songs can vary from being incredibly stupid to dreadfully catchy to sentimental to the most epic thing you've ever heard. Just like the Star Wars prequels, you could pretty much experience it on mute with only the music playing and still understand the emotional weight and feelings the story is trying to convey. But playing on mute would be doing yourself a disservice.
You can't play the game on mute.
Dang it, Cacnea, you ruined my transition. Also, what do you mean?
You read the dialogue, it's already muted.
Oh, right. You could pretty much experience it on mute while removing the dialogue and only having the music play. Well, that doesn't sound nearly as seamless.
Don't care, devil's advocate out.
Ugh. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh! But playing it on mute would be doing yourself a disservice because you'd be missing out on the... Comedy is subjective, but I don't think anyone will debate me when I say this game is hilarious. The amount of times I laughed hard when streaming Chapter 2 probably annoyed some of my fans.
It's Chris from the other. What do we say? Crime. You know, just committing crimes. Just gonna do some crimes and go. Sorry. And go to jail forever. It sucks.
Toby Fox has always had a great sense of humor. If I had to quantify it, it's like SpongeBob, where the jokes are really stupid, but also sort of clever in their own dumb way. He isn't afraid to have his characters look and act like fools, which is admirable. While some characters are funnier than others for sure, I wouldn't say that there are characters who don't get the spotlight. Every character has the capacity to give a punchline, except for King, oddly enough. Lancer just throws him in jail. It's called Not Funny Jail. As a writer myself, I think that's pretty hard, being able to write multiple characters that can be funny. You always have that knee-jerk reaction to utilize the comic relief first. But in this game, all the characters can be comic relief. Chris doesn't react to anything, even if he really should. Susie gets mad at everything and just seems done with the zaniness of the Dark Worlds. Rousey is so innocent to the point where watching him try to be confrontational is just plain adorable. Noelle thinks she's smooth when she totally isn't smooth, and Berdley is an alpha male gamer. These are just the main characters in chapters 1 and 2, by the way. There are dozens of insane NPCs to meet and interact with.
Hey!
#1 salesman 1997.
Keep watching for the
State lottery.
Dizzy Spammed. Break them!
General computing software.
Check it out! Treecko
Sibling.
YouTube video will
Delete assets.
your subscription fee!
He's here. Listen, Treecko's not who he says he is. He's not who he says he is. Please, fight me! Ah!
Yeah, Spamton's pretty cool too.
You have betrayed!
Hyperlink blocked.
There's a light inside your soul that's still shining in the cold.
If I had to convey my feelings on Deltarune, I would honestly quantify it at... Okay, we'll talk about it. So, Chapter 2 has a genocide route that has been dubbed the Weird Route, and it's honestly pretty disturbing. Okay, that's probably me being sensitive, but good lord, after experiencing the wholesomeness of Noelle and the boss fight with Queen, I don't know if I can ever stomach doing this. So I probably won't, honestly, but I still wanted to bring it up to make sure I cover everything the game has to offer. Not to mention it has the capacity to be even more interesting than the genocide route in Undertale. Here's a gist. So the part where you get Noelle on your side is where it begins. You have to kill every enemy, just like in Undertale, but instead by using Noelle's ice magic. This in turn makes her stronger and colder. Ha! Yeah, don't laugh for too long, Berdley, because you're next. Yep, your mentality starts to get more and more demented as you go. Just like our familiar friend Chara, that scallywag. Only this time you're in Palpatine's chair. Time to corrupt a good person into doing your dirty work. Once you reach the boss fight with Berdley, Noelle identifies him as an enemy. You nudge her, multiple times might I add, to use her fatal ice ability Snowgrave. And horrifically freezes Berdley solid. She then leaves! Hope you had fun. And that's not the end of it. Once you all wake up in the real world, you discover Berdley isn't waking up. I think we all know why Berdley isn't waking up. But they don't, and it's very upsetting. Or at least Noelle pretends like she doesn't. She goes into a bit of denial about it, and it's sad to watch. Also eerie, because she actually starts to grow more of a spine instead of being all cute and nervous. If only this character development could have happened without the murder part. Yeah, when a buddy of mine, PanChamBro, actually messaged me the tweet regarding the genocide route's discovery, I, reacted interestingly.
What? 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 What?
It's so compelling that you can break the game like this. It skips a massive chunk of the story and is pretty much a shortcut to the ending. Not to mention the implications that 1, you just made one of your classmates into a murderer, and 2, you just killed off a classmate. I can't even fathom how this is gonna affect the story going forward. It's at this point that I remember a core theme of Deltarune Chapter 1. No one can choose who they are in this world. Sure, no one can choose who they are, but does that mean others can decide it for them? I am scared. And I don't think I am ever playing this route. Sorry, I just connect with these characters way too much. And unlike the genocide run in Undertale, you don't really seem to get rewarded with anything in Deltarune. If anything, you just get punished by skipping to the end and losing out on a massive chunk of the game. The only reason I ever attempted a genocide run in Undertale was just so I can get to the Sans boss battle. You know, probably the most well-known part of Undertale, Megalovania. Remember that? Remember Kenny Omega? The genocide route in Undertale just begs you to play it. And I know that was the point to the genocide route, that you have to deny that feeling of completion, but still, I think this weird route will be far more impactful when you're rewarded with nothing but the fact that you did something incredibly bad. That being said, I probably will be one of those quote-unquote sickos that like to watch but are too weak to do it themselves when it inevitably gets uploaded to YouTube. Now, pardon me for a second while I get all dramatic. Deltarune is special to me because it's a sum of its parts. Everything is in full swing. These characters feel like family, and watching them hurt is like watching your own loved ones being hurt. Seeing them achieve their victories fill you with pride. Having them confide in you makes you feel like you're worthy of that trust. It's very rare that a video game can fill you with these feelings. Personally, the closest a video game has ever reached that level for me was Mass Effect 2. The ending essentially has you going on a a suicide mission where, you guessed it, every teammate you have recruited can die, including you. You've spent so much time with these awesome characters that you legitimately think of them as friends and want them all to make it out alive. That, my friends, is good writing. That's what Deltarune has with its cast of characters. Whenever I see Susie and Rouse, I just see my two best friends and get excited that we're about to have a wacky and awesome adventure together. Fun gang forever, man. And having the adventure be a hyper-creative, hilarious, heartfelt, and legitimately fun ride is just the cherry on top. I mean, geez, if there was ever a game to convince you that modern graphics really don't matter in the quality of a video game, it is Deltarune. I could watch these animated sprites use up to 2 megabytes for hours on end. And I have. I'm not going to pretend Deltarune is perfect. There are definitely parts where the pacing can get a tad shoddy, but the parts are so few and far between that I never really even consider it. Not to mention it isn't even done yet, so I can't look at the story like it's a completed narrative, picking up all the little things here and there and be like, oh, that's what that meant. Deltarune, just like Undertale, is an experience that makes you feel all the better for playing it. I now want to quote Toby Fox himself in a very interesting blog he posted regarding the creation of Deltarune. Actually, at first, I was very worried about making this game. Everyone would be excited about my next work, so I thought whatever I did would disappoint everyone who played Undertale. I don't think I can make something that makes you feel the same as that. You're right, Toby. It doesn't make me feel the same way Undertale did. It made me feel even better than Undertale did.
Don't end it on a sappy note, bro.
What, you don't like sappy? Here then. Banana. Get the banana! Potassium! There, funny joke.
You have betrayed!
Hyperlink blocked.
Special thanks to my top tier patrons: Nancy, Bumblebutt, Terror XD, Liddy Kitty, and Treecko Simp. Also super special thanks to Revtrocity for voicing Spamton. You should check him out. He's quite the big shot.
You simpleton!